several decades, the Wilner Center has been promoting research and scholarship in the Western Hemisphere. Thanks to the support, creativity, and energy of Mauricio Font, the director of the center, we have also organized international conferences and promoted books. Here are some images of participants and Wilner fellows. So we have had some book parties in the past. That's posted 2008, 2011, and also we promoted the CUNY authors at the Latin American Studies Association here in New York. Okay, today we're honored to have librarians and archivists from the New York Public Library and CUNY providing an update on the research sources for studying Latin America, Iberian, and Latinos in the US. It is my pleasure to introduce Paloma Celis Carbajal, right there, see, Curator for Latin American, Iberian, and Latino Studies at the New York Public Library. Silvia Cho, who's the library liaison for Latin America, Iberian, and Latino cultures here at the Graduate Center. Sara Aponte, who's chief librarian of the CUNY Dominican Studies Institute at City College. Cheryl Beredo, who is curator of the Manuscripts, Archives, and Rare Division of the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Studies, in Black Culture in the New York Public Library. Pedro Juan Hernandez, who is senior archivist in Archives of the Puerto Rican Diaspora in the Centro de Estudios Puertorriqueños at Hunter. And Thomas Lannon, over there, who is Assistant Director for Manuscripts, Archives, and Rare Book at the Stephen Schwarzman Building at the New York Public Library. You have their bibliographies there in the handouts that you received at the entrance. So first, Paloma Celis Carbajal and Silvia Cho will give a brief introduction. Then we will have the panelists talk, each of them for 15 minutes. And at the end, we will have a questions and answer session, okay? Well, thank you very much, and help yourselves, there is coffee there. Thank you. All right, so, Paloma.
Silvia Cho, my colleague at the Graduate Center, and I would like to thank Professors Mauricio Font and Araceli Tinajero for giving us the opportunity to organize this session, which we hope will provide a very small sample of the vast archival resources that are at CUNY and at the New York Public Library for scholars interested in Latin American topics. We also would like to thank our colleagues here present that so enthusiastically accepted to be part of this session and share their expertise on their archives. We decided, Silvia and I, when I talk about we, to focus on archival resources because Silvia, as the librarian, the liaison for the Graduate Center, identified that among graduate students here, there's an increasing interest and need to identify and consult several types of archival materials for their research, be it a final paper or their dissertation. In an effort to foster a collaborative environment, we decided to invite archivists from both institutions, CUNY and NYPL, to talk about their resources and examples of some of the projects they have going on in their archives, and also, in some cases, a brief historical account of these archives. Our objective is not only to create awareness of these resources among the audience, but also among ourselves. And among the audience, there's also several librarians that I recognize and archivists, mainly in order to establish closer connections and identify future possibilities of collaboration with scholars. And when I talk about scholars, I'm talking about faculty and students too, or with fellow librarians and archivists. So please, anything, ideas that might spark out of this panel, reach out to any of us. and share those with us. And who knows, maybe it will become something very interesting in the near or not so distant future. We're also fully aware that one panel is not enough to cover all the resources that exist in these institutions, so we hope this is only the first of several other talks, panels. We can talk about what can that be, how that can take shape. In several locations. It can be what you were talking about, a tour, or we share sometimes here, sometimes in other parts of the city, also to make it more accessible to others in other parts of the city. Focused on archive, and these panels or talks focused on archive and library resources for scholars interested in Latin America, the Iberian Peninsula, and U.S. Latinos. I'll pass the microphone now to my colleague, Silvia.
Hola a todos, bienvenidos. Again, I'm Silvia. I am from the Graduate Center Library, and I am the liaison for the Latin American, Iberian, and Latino Cultures program here at the Graduate Center, as well as the M.L.S concentration in, bear with me, Latin American, Caribbean, and Latino studies. I am also, incidentally, the liaison for the International Migration program. And my personal interest in both of these areas stem from my own background. I am what you might call a twice migrant. I am originally from Korea, but I grew up in Argentina before I ended up in New York. Okay, so my involvement with this panel started my lucky day when we had the luck of having Paloma come to New York City as the new curator for NYPL. And she was kind enough to stop by my office one day and say, hey, I'm the new curator from NYPL. And as it happens, I was just at the Billner Center and I met Dr. Tinajero. And we were talking and we were thinking about starting some collaborations, how about an event. And I have to say that day, I think my jaw dropped a little bit because I was like, of course we should have that. That's a fantastic idea. You know, because you just become aware of so many amazing and deep resources that you have throughout the city. And it is a shame sometimes to see that some of the resources don't get used as often as they could. You know, so I was very excited about this idea. I'm very thankful that I could be involved. So I'm going to repeat a little bit of the things that Paloma already said so well, but I just want to say that we decided, because we had to start somewhere, we decided to start close to home, offering a few of the best examples of some of the archives that we have right here in CUNY and NYPL. And we were lucky enough to be able to get our expert colleagues here would be able to sort of start to scratch the surface and show us a little bit about their collections, as well as give us some practical tips so you can have some takeaways from here today. But more importantly, we're incredibly inspired by having been able to bring all these people in one room. And we hope that this is the start of new connections and conversations and ideas, that help start exploring those resources more and get them used. So we're really excited to see you here today. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Hopefully this is the start of something. And like she was saying, we're looking for ideas for a future series of events. So if you have any curiosities, questions, please do reach out.
Thank you so much, Professor Tinajero.
Oh, you're welcome.
She's a great professor at City College, by the way. If you didn't know that, take her class. Thank you so much, Silvia and Paloma. Paloma came to revolutionize New York. Thank you for that. And we are here to share what we do every single day at our different libraries and archives. Thank you so much for being here. This is so nice to see this room full of great people, great scholars. I have people from my colleagues from Salam, Melissa from the New York Public Library, Peter, mi querido Peter, emeritus from Princeton University, and like that. We have many great people here. Paloma, Angela from the New York Public Library, no, New York University, yes, okay. So and many other great people here. Thank you so much for coming. We are going to talk today, my part is about the Dominican Institute and what we do there. Okay, so we began in 1992 as a research unit based on the necessity of a place that people could go and learn about Dominicans. not only about Dominicans being baseball players or bachata players, but we are much more than that. And we wanted people to know that we are the bad, the good, the beautiful, the ugly, everything. So the Institute exists because of that. And in '94, I began at the Dominican Institute as a college work study. And I began creating the library. So the library is my child. I have a son, but he knows that that's the first. He knows that. So yes, and I have seen it grown. So I am very happy to share what we are doing now. By the way, I have Jensen Ortiz here. He's our librarian. That's what we do at the Dominican Institute. People come to us as volunteers, like he did a couple of years ago. Now he has a double master's in library sciences, archives, and history from Queens College. That's what we do at the Dominican. So beware if you're coming to visit us. We convert you to librarians and archivists. So we have a research unit, then we have the library, and we have the archives. One of the major contributions that we have done is unearthing a man that now happens to be the first non-native immigrant in the city of New York. He came to New York City when it was not New York yet, in 1613, and I have music to tell you about Juan Rodriguez. Juan Rodriguez came on a Dutch ship from Santo Domingo. He happened to be a black man or mulatto man, and he was a non-enslaved man, but a free man. And he decided to stay, and that makes him the first immigrant in the city of New York. So he happens to be also the first Afro-Latino, the first Dominican. And people know about Juan Rodriguez, but they never mentioned the Santo Domingo part or the Dominican part. So we're saying we can share him. It's okay. We want to be part of the picture. So we have the information about Juan Rodriguez. We unearthed the documents from the Amsterdam Dutch documents, and we transcribed them and we translated them. And it is available in that monograph that you see there, the cover, and it's in our page. And I'm going to show you later on how you access those publications. Also, we are working on Dominicans arriving through Ellis Island. When you see Ellis Island, you mainly see Europeans coming, and it's okay because the majority were European, but we have found more than 5,000 Dominicans. And perhaps it's not a lot comparing to the European part, but for us, one Dominican means a lot. We want people to know that we exist, that we're here. And not only Dominicans came to Ellis Island, but all other groups, as you know, other Caribbean groups. And what we are doing is we're studying this community, who they were, why they came to the United States, if they stay, why. And what happened to them that we don't know much about them. And that's research conducted by our director, Dr. Ramona Hernandez. She's a sociologist. She has a lot of hair. I don't know if you have seen her, but she's amazing. She does a lot of work. And this is one of her projects. But I wanted to share with you that that's one project that we are also talking at the Dominican Institute. We also have this massive migration, and that's the one that people know about. People say, oh, Dominicans came to the United States in the 60s. Yes, the massive majority, but now we have Juan Rodriguez and we have Dominicans to Ellis Island. But this is the one that people know more about because of all of these things that happened in the Dominican Republic that pushed the community to come out, the population to come out of the country and came to the United States and established themselves here. So we are now almost 2 million Dominicans in the United States. So beware, we're everywhere. We are everywhere, even in Alaska. We are not many Dominicans, but we are everywhere. So it's important to know about us, who we are and all that. So, but the majority are, where do the majority of Dominicans live? Who can tell me? New York, but where in New York?
Bronx.
Who said the Bronx? You
Washington
are.
Heights.
I'm giving you lollipop. Huh?
Washington Heights.
Not anymore in Washington Heights. Even though Washington Heights was declared a little Dominican Republic, like little Italy, little Chinatown, like that. Now Washington Heights is that, but no, Dominicans are living in the Bronx, the majority of them. But what happens to Washington Heights is the place where Dominicans concentrate more. And in the Bronx, it's more dispersed, the community. And then also you go to Washington Heights, you can get your pastel en hoja, your habichuela con dulce, all these treats, Dominican treats. And also street vendors and the businesses, so, but no. And what's happening in New York City that Dominicans are going to other places? because of gentrification. That's one of the causes. And also Dominicans are moving throughout the United States, not only to the Bronx, but throughout the United States, all over. And we published a study recently about that. So what do we do at the Dominican Institute? We want to share our sources, not only with adults like you, young adults like you, but with very young kids. And I have Peter here, who happened to be part of that program. Peter came to us for a couple of weeks, right? Every Friday, we had 8th graders coming to us as a Bridge to College program. And what we do, we teach them about Dominican culture, Dominican music, Dominican history, but through archives, through library sources. We allow these kids to touch archival sources. Of course, don't be afraid. You know, Jensen will kill me because he's very on top of that with the appropriate cover and all that. But we expose these kids to primary sources. When they go to college, they know what it is. And they are able to continue their studies beyond and ahead. So we have that. We also have professional development for teachers, because we believe a lot in teaching teachers how to teach Dominican studies. And we also have online exhibits as open source. For example, we were able to secure space in our store, like JSTOR, but our store. And we have now collections there. We have a great collection that is called Dominican artists in the United States. And we began with Josefina Baez. She's an amazing artist, and we have that. We want to do something like that with Dominican writers. And we have a Dominican writer right here, Jose Donde Estás de la Rosa. He has published great books, and we have them in our library. Because our collection is made of donations because of great writers like Jose. We also have these exhibits. What we're doing, we're putting them in Omeka now. And in Omeka, what we want to do is to get lesson plans related to those exhibits, open source for teachers, so they say, I have no time to create a lesson plan. I know, here it is. Yeah. No excuses for you to teach Dominican studies. So we are doing that now. Okay, so besides that, we also have a great exhibit that is called Dominicans in World War II. And we even have found a Dominican as a Tuskegee Airman. Do you know about Tuskegee Airmen, right? We found a Dominican there. Yes, his name is Stephen Hotis, very handsome man. But besides that, an amazing man. He died at a very young age, but he left a legacy. And he is with this group of African-American pilots who are saying, please, we don't want segregation, please pay us. And they're going to be taken to jail. And Hotis happened to be part of that group. So we have a Dominican there. So that exhibit is going to become an Omeka site, so you can access that. You don't have to be, even though we love people visiting us, but if you're like living very far away and you want to access that, then you have information there. We also have an exhibit that is Dominicans in New York. These are 4 of our major collections, We have collections about Dominicans in everyday life. We have also pianists, we have composers, we have artists and the like, civic leaders. We also have our publications in an institutional repository, which is part of CUNY. And you're able to access our publications there. We believe a lot in open source. Of course, we want to sell books. Yes, why not? But also we want people to get them free of charge. So you're welcome to visit our page in the CUNY Academic Works. We have a great project, and Jensen is right here. Jensen is one of the leaders of that project. It's a music project, and it's an NEH grant-based project. We're going to be working with sources, and also is from the 1920s. Dominicans have been doing music in this university in the United States from 1920, and Jensen has unearthed great resources. So this is one project that also is on the making. As I said before, it's a website, it's a Dominican-related curriculum that we want to be put together for our teachers. And this is a project that I want to talk about. It's about primary sources on the first Blacks in the Americas. And it's an amazing, it's not because I was involved in the project, it's an amazing project. And Jorge Matos can say that, right, Jorge? Jorge works at Hostels, and he can use this with his students there. And the thing is that this project, what we did is that we put together a collection of 71 manuscripts from the 16th century. And we transcribed it, we translated them, and we made comments. And also we have maps there. Perhaps we have a minute at the end to showcase this, but it's an amazing website, and you can, and then again, the notion that Dominicans are racist and Dominicans don't want to be black and all that, well, it is, for some, it is true. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but not all of us. And why? Because we have blacks coming to Santo Domingo, that happens to be now Haiti and the Dominican Republic since day one, since Columbus arrived in those places. So we need to understand our history to understand now our present. Okay, so the next one is a digital also project, and it's called Teaching Tool of Paleography. Why? Because we believe in democratizing knowledge. Anthony Stevens Acevedo happened to be our assistant director for a while, colonial historian, and he said, why do only, even though we are the graduate center and PhD people are amazing, but we want also people who don't have PhDs to access this information, the public. So what he did is that he put together a website with the help of an NEH grant. So the manuscript is there, and then you can read it letter by letter. So perhaps later on I can show you quickly after I have, how many more minutes? 3 minutos. Okay. So I don't know if sí, mejor. Sí. So let me finish this now, so I can give the space to my other colleagues, and then we can have questions and a great conversation at the end. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cheryl Barreto, and I'm the Curator of Manuscripts, Archives, and Rare Books at the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. I've never been here before, so this is kind of interesting and exciting for me, and I have no idea who I'm talking to. So I thought, just to start, am I talking to grad students who are about to start on dissertation research, since we're at the Graduate Center? Yes? No? Faculty, okay, ready to start a new project.
Undergraduate students.
Undergraduates too, okay, a mix.
MA students.
MA students.
Retired.
Excellent.
And general public too.
And general public, perfect, okay. Good, because this is I hoped that would be the case, because this is kind of how I have planned this. So I guess I'll start by just saying that I'm pretty new to the Schomburg Center and to NYPL, well, thus to NYPL and to New York City, and I am not a Latin Americanist at all. So I have a PhD in American Studies, and I'm kind of oriented in the other direction towards Asia. But I'm starting to learn more about the collections, and what I thought I would do today is tell you a little bit about the Schomburg Center, how we're organized, and then some of the kinds of things that you can find for the research that you might be doing, and then a couple of ways that you might start to access the materials. So another question, have folks been to the Schomburg Center before? Oh yeah, okay, that's awesome, great. For research or for fun? Because there's a lot of both. Yeah.
Research is fun.
Research is fun. Did you say that? Research is fun. Okay, so this is what I'll do in the next, it's handy, there's a timer here. In the next 13 minutes, I'll say just a couple of things about how the Schomburg Center is organized. So if you haven't visited as a researcher, you know what's what. It can be a little disorienting for folks. And then I'll start talking a little bit about the division of which I'm the curator, the Manuscripts, Archives, and Rare Books division. So, and then I'll give those examples I mentioned, say a couple of things about finding them on your own, and then I guess I'll say a bit about visiting the Schomburg Center too, according to this bullet. So the Schomburg Center is divided into a few different divisions that are organized by format, and a lot of people start in the Jean Blackwell Hudson Research and Reference Division. That's where actually lots of graduate students and general public come to sit quietly in the library if you find yourself uptown and need a quiet place. And that's where a lot of the secondary sources are found, access to databases for newspapers, historical sources, and some rare books that have found their way into the general collection, which is a thing at NYPL, you'll find. So that's probably your first stop if you haven't been to the Schomburg before, or if you're starting on a new project. People down there have a very good sense of all of the divisions and can get you kind of to the next place that you want to go. There's also the photographs and prints division that includes photographs and prints of all kinds from that cover all of the same topics. We're all doing Black culture globally, so that's where you might stop if you are. Sometimes people start there, sometimes people end there when you're ready to do images for your project, or your exhibit, or your publication. There's a moving image and recorded sound division, and that's a place where there's a lot of commercially available audio and video. Again, on the global Black experience, as well as some digitized audio and video of oral histories and the like. So it's both kind of things that you might find for purchase, but things that you're only going to find at the Schomburg Center is available through moving image and recorded sound. And then there's the art and artifacts division, and that's not open to the public right now. In the middle of the big collections move, but you will see around the city at various shows pieces from the collection. And when you see the little label and says Schomburg Center, that's where that came from. And then finally, there's the manuscripts, archives, and rare books division. Did I get all of them? I did, right? I think so. Manuscripts, archives, and rare books division. And let's see. And in the manuscripts, archives, and rare books division, you'll find the personal papers of individuals, the organizational records of organizations, as well as and rare books. That's manuscripts, archives, and rare books. You'll also find things like sheet music, ephemera, flyers, pamphlets, things that weren't intended necessarily to last forever, but someone had the foresight to collect it, and so it's there. Programs and playbills, there's a very strong theater component to the collection, so that might be of interest to folks. And the manuscripts, archives, and rare books division, and this might be interesting to this audience, is the kind of physical home for the Lapidus Center for the Study of Transatlantic Slavery. And so all of the books and manuscripts that have been acquired through the Lapidus Center, you would come see me and come to the manuscripts, archives, and rare books division to see that material. So that's kind of how we're organized, and that's the part that I deal with, manuscripts, archives, and rare books. The collections that I chose show something a little bit different about what you'll find at the Schomburg Center. And so this one is Club Cubano Interamericano records that are the organizational records of a group here in New York City. Anyone familiar with them? Yeah? Okay. Right. And so this was donated by members of the organization. It's a New York City thing. And so you can see the activities of a group of people in the city. So that's one kind of thing that we've got at the Schomburg Center. So if you've got a US-based kind of bottom-up project, that would be something that you could be interested in. The Julian Mayfield papers are another example of the kinds of papers that we have. So the papers of an individual who traveled all over the world, did all kinds of things. But if you are focused on Latin America, he had his moments there, and so that would be something that you might find. So something that maybe came to the Schomburg Center because of X reason actually will work for your work for Y reason. And that's something to be aware of for the collections. In general, we've tried to be mindful of that in being able to talk about the collections and how it's cataloged, but you also will know when you see a name like, he spent some time there, that's good to know. A third kind of collection is the Herskovits collection, and they were a team of academics, and I see some nodding heads. So the Herskovits traveled and did work all over the place, and so maybe you're interested in Africa, or maybe you're interested in Brazil. But again, these are the papers. They didn't. They created them, but it was created in the course of them doing their own research. So it's different from, say, the Club Cubano records, which document their own activities, but this is documenting their research of what other people were doing. So it's a different kind of collection that people don't always think to use for their own work, but is handy. And then the fourth is the George Westerman papers. People who work on Panama love this collection because it's really rich. He seemed to have collected everything. He was very active in all areas of life, it seemed, and you love historians or any kind of student of anything, and any archivist will love a collector. So he seemed to not only generate a lot of stuff, but pick up a lot of stuff. And so if you're interested, again, 20th century, he would be a good person. So somebody who, again, maybe you're not interested in George Westerman per se, but everything that he did could be useful. Everything he collected could be useful. Kind of, you can come at him sideways. That makes sense. So I'm not going to click through because I've intruded on your good graces enough. But I'll just point out a few links, and maybe these slides will be available to folks afterwards, and you can click through and explore on your own. But 3 places that I think are really useful if you're starting to do research at the Schomburg Center, and Thomas will probably have some version of this as well, so I won't get into it too much. But the first is schomburg.org, and there you end up at the Schomburg Center's NYPL site, and you can click through to the different divisions. We all have different hours. We're all a little bit different from each other, so you can learn about our idiosyncrasies and our hours there. And the second link is the catalog.nypl.org, which, again, if you just come visit, we'll go through it. But there are a couple. I'm sure that's the same with the CUNY catalog. There are real idiosyncrasies to it that sometimes it just helps to talk with someone to know, like, if you click 2 more times in a place that you don't think to click, you'll find some very useful information. It's true. This is a true story. And that, I mean, no disrespect to the catalog, just you have to kind of know how to navigate it. And then the third link is to archives.nypl.org. And there you'll be able to search across all of the online finding aids for the collections. And that's handy because a lot of times there will be a detailed listing of what you'll find in any of these collections. And if you kind of scroll through some of the stuff at the top, you can click through to other collections that are on the same topics. So that's worth exploring. One caveat about all of this is that not everything, and I'm sure you've heard this in other sessions like this, not everything is available online. And so if you see something that's of interest and it's not there, you should just call us or email us and say, I'm pretty sure, I followed a footnote, it was there, where is it now? Please help me. And we'll be able to send you that information. And I guess the last note about that is not only are some of the finding aids not available online, but not everything that we know about the collection is necessarily in the finding aid. So in some instances, the staff who processed the collection or did the project related to that collection are around, and they will know some kind of random thing that didn't warrant, a guide that is available to everyone, for all time on the internet. But your weird little thing is exactly the weird little thing that they remember about that collection. And so it's really worth being able to come in and talk about what it is you're trying to find. And someone might be able to tell you something you don't think is there. And invite all of you to talk with me afterwards, or after this and after we leave here today, about the collections at the Schomburg Center. Thank you.
Thank you.
So good afternoon. Today's presentation, I keep it broad. First, I would like to thank the organizers and all of you to be present here and be introducing the Center for Dominican Studies archives. And as always, when you do a presentation, you don't know if you want to be very specific or too broad about. And that's especially I'm part of a unit within the center. So I decided to kind of be broader and hopefully cover a little bit of all the bases, and you come up and ask all the specific questions of things that are more pertinent to whatever work you're doing. I have some handouts, and I'm going to skip this because I try to provide as much information as I can. That there is kind of broad information in terms of Puerto Ricans and who we are and how we get to become a U.S. Part of U.S. So basically, we are 405 years we were a Spain colony, and for 111 years we have been U.S. territory. For the last 102 years, we have been American citizens, and there are more Puerto Ricans stateside than Puerto Ricans in the island. Right now, we have 6 Puerto Ricans serving in the U.S. House of Representatives in Congress, and not all of them are Democrats. One Republican from Idaho. Very close to Donald Trump, and we have a non-voting delegate, so that shows a little bit of the complexity of Puerto Rico within. So we are Hispanic speaking person, especially I'm from the island, so I grew up there as an adult, and while other Puerto Ricans are completely fluent in both languages. So that shows a little bit of the complexity of being on the island. But basically here we are showcasing our presence in terms of Puerto Ricans' presence in New York goes back to the 1890s. And there were Puerto Rican revolutionaries like a young man named Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, who were conspiring against Spain colonial power here with other Cubans and Puerto Ricans in New York City. In fact, the Puerto Rican flag that is so dear to Puerto Ricans probably was displayed in public streets in New York City before it was displayed in Puerto Rico. And like many Latinos in the country, we found that the U.S. border crossed us, not the other way around. So become Puerto Rico a U.S. territory, going back to 1898. The center that I'm part of, the Center for Puerto Rican Studies, Centro de Puerto Riqueños, was founded 46 years ago in the midst of, as a consequence of the civil rights struggle movement and the demands from students to have a representation in the academic setting, especially in the CUNY system. Basically, the CUNY was developing and establishing Puerto Rican studies programs throughout the colleges, and the center was created to as a unit that produced research and support the academics and the different programs. Very often, it was thought that there was no history of Puerto Ricans in New York, as basically the center and other scholars from all those CUNY programs had to take the challenge and prove that there was a history, a rich history of Puerto Ricans in New York. And these are some samples of early publications by the Center for Puerto Rican Studies and publications by scholars that were working together with Centro to find the histories and life stories of many Puerto Ricans who had lived in New York going back to 1920s and even further. We got basically the center, besides producing all that research work, they launched several oral history projects to uncover the life stories of Puerto Rican pioneers like Jesus Colón and Cuban photographer Justo Arati. And also oral history projects to document thousands of women working in the garment industry. We got archival collections before we have an archives, and that's because we got the Jesus Colón papers and the Justo Martí, who was a Cuban, photographs much earlier than we formally established the archives. The Centro de Estudios Puertorriqueños has expanded the services to that we provide to scholars, to the communities, and to all Americans, anybody who's interested in learning, finding more about Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans. Right now here, this show that shows all the different features and all the different programs that the Centro has developed, and they are available to the public. If you look at in the top of your right, you will see the Centro collections. That's what the archives resources will be available to researchers. We also have Centro Library where you can download or find if we have the books or dissertations that you're looking for. More close to the center, you will see Puerto Rican flag, Rebuild Puerto Rico. That is devoted to deal with the information and all the strategies dealing with the economic crisis that Puerto Rico is going through right now. And also address issues in terms of the impact and the consequences of the Hurricane Maria more recently. We also have, the Centro has created different educational tools and programs that you see in the bottom. And again, some publications, voices. So as you see, the Center has is attempting to offer a lot of different things so that the public feel that they can find the information that they need to. The library was planned and it started and open to scholars and to the community at large from day one. Here in the Centro right now, you can find all our resources and CUNY Plus. We are part of the CUNY Plus. And you can do search only on the Centro within the CUNY Plus system, or you can search all around the different libraries in the system. We are holdings also are part of the OCLC. We have around 15,000 books, 3,000 Ph.D. dissertation, a selection of over 500 periodicals and journals, 600 films. We have 5,000 bibliographies divided by topics. So that kind of shows the kind of primary and secondary sources that you can find in the Central Library. We are honored that many scholars have visited the library and archives and constantly are using the archives. And to keep myself humble, I put a selected quote, so I attribute it to Laurie Thomas and Aldo Lauria that are here present. Basically, they were saying the library and archives in the Center for Puerto Rico have given invaluable support to nearly every historian writing about Puerto Ricans and the U.S. over the last several decades. And we are honored by that, and we are always constantly looking for adding new resources and trying to find things that the researchers need to, in order to write a PhD dissertation, so do their publications. The archives originally started as the Puerto Rican Community Archives and New York Archives, and expanded from that point from the local New York-based location to become an archives that has adding new collections that represent the Puerto Rican migrants from all over the country. And basically, we are documenting Puerto Rican stateside, and we document specific the history and culture of those Puerto Rican communities. If you go into our website and the collections section that I mentioned, you will find all the archives holdings, and basically there you can find over 300 collections listed in alphabetical order, and we provide brief descriptions of those collections. And basically the collection, the volume, the size of the collection is about 5,000 cubic feet. You can use the finding aids or inventories list are provided in the site, and those will take you, if it's a collection that's fully processed, it will take you to the specific collection, so you will find at the folder level what do we have in that particular collection. We do have many of our findings in EAD, encoded archival descriptions, and also we do have inventories. We have all the collections open to researchers, even on process, because in the past we used to hold waiting, thinking that we would be able to get it done, and things did not happen because lack of funds or not enough staff to deal with the volume. So we decided that we open to researchers, and they prove us that they can handle the collection the right way, and we make them available, and that expand the opportunity for them to write about the things that they need to write now. Okay. Here in the collections, most of them are, whether they are personal papers of individuals that come from all kind of fields. Here we do have elected officials, we have a Pentecostal minister, we do have a community activist. So those are examples of some of the personal papers that you find. All finding aids are both in English and Spanish. That's something that we want to do within our communities. Deserve to feel comfortable to explore the archival resources in whatever language they feel comfortable with. We do have the records of organizations, and some of them are key organizations, like the Puerto Rican Legal Defense Education Fund. And that collection got a lot of use when Judge Sonia Sotomayor was nominated as judge, and we end up with having the journalists from New York Times, and a delegation from the Republicans, and another delegation with the Democrats fighting for getting access to the records of the Puerto Rican Legal Defense Education Fund, because Sonia Sotomayor has been a board member and they want to use it, and we're pulling our hairs to try to keep them under control. And I had to be tough with the reception. I think that's the only time that I would really have to be very tough and keep it separated. So we also have the community organizations like United Bronx Piracy Inc. and the Central Records and ASPIDA that have to do with the bilingual education and many other issues among Latinos here. We do have, as I mentioned, the archives from the New York Archives has become an archives of the Puerto Rican diaspora, and we have several collections that document the Puerto Rican experience in Hawaii. In particular, that's the Blaise Camacho Sousa papers. And we do have some other collections with the minutes from Puerto Ricans in San Francisco. In fact, those were the two first earlier communities in the United States. In the 1900s, some Puerto Ricans were recruited by farm labor associations to go to Hawaii. They didn't have idea where they were going, and some of them throughout the long journey to Hawaii decided to stay in other places. Here it shows a little bit of a records collection where we have this is a collection that we got in custody, and it has the records of this Puerto Rican government agency operating in 16 locations in the northeast and midwest of the United States. The archives tells the story of the politics and government, and has women collections, and some of the women are known at the local level up to the national level, and here in particular we have Antonia Pantoja and Helen Rodriguez-Tria, Pura Verprega, and many others. We do have some collections that deal with the LGBTQ collections, and this a Latino group created this gay cable program, and we have their holdings. And we have literary collections of people who are poets, writers, short stories tellers, and we do have a very important artworks and posters collection that represent the art representation of from Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans here in the States. We do have our collection showing. We say the archives, though is an archives of Puerto Rican community, But we are interacting with all the different communities, and so the archives very often are the part of the history of New York, and at large is part of the history of the United States. And we have many researchers from different parts of the world coming to use the archive. So this, my time is over, so I'm going to quickly show, and hopefully at least the image stay in your mind. And I couldn't talk about the digital archives, so that's the way that you can access the resources, and it's very useful. Huh?
Later,
Yeah,
I'll show
okay.
it.
So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll try to keep this quick so we can have a conversation after, as is the goal of this event. My name is Thomas Lannon. I work at the New York Public Library in the Manuscripts and Archives and Rare Books Division. I mostly work with archival collections. It's great to see my colleagues here tonight, and thank you to Paloma for bringing me down here to work with the Bildner Center. I normally interface with the Graduate Center through the History Department, so it's exciting to meet new people and to hopefully invite you down to sort of to use the collections. And we are, one of my colleagues, Miriam Diarteni, is here, who also I might call upon at one moment. I'm going to sort of talk about some things, the old things that we have, that's a technical term, some strengths that we have, and some new opportunities. So I'm going to start off with the background. It's really important to remember that the New York Public Library was built in 1911, but there were collections in the holdings of people before that structure was created. So therefore, when you're interfacing with collections at the New York Public Library, in the archives and rare books especially, you're interfacing with people and places before 1911. So that we have collections that predate the structure. These collections came from the Astor Library and the Lenox Library. The Astor Library is on top. That's now the Public Theater on Lafayette Street. And below it is the Lenox Library, which is knocked down. It's on the site of the Frick Library. I bring these up because the holdings in these two libraries were actually moved to the New York Public Library. And the collecting tastes of these people also inform the type of things that we have. For instance, James Lennox had a collection that's referred to as the Obadiah Rich collection. Obadiah Rich collection for colonial Latin American history, or colonial Latin American. Do people know this? So we call it Obadiah Rich, but in fact it's transcripts of Latin American governance and the colonial period. And it's called Obadiah Rich because Obadiah Rich was the 19th century bibliographer gentleman who collected it. But underneath it are the experiences and documents and records of many more people. And so therefore this happens in archives, that we tend to sort of focus on one person, this person named Obadiah Rich, who was actually a really important and interesting person, and was a minister to Spain under James-Madison, and was so Spanish history is written into the Obadiah Rich collection, because how he managed to get it out of Spain is itself a great history. What's that? It was safe. I think it's legit. But it was purchased by James Lennox. But what's fascinating are the layers of history that happen here. And of course, there's erasures. We know this. And these erasures are what we're looking for as researchers, as stewards of archives. One of those, and they go on and on. There's someone named Juan Bautista Munoz, who was a very important bibliographer and historian, who wrote a book called the Historia del Nuevo Mundo. He died in 1799, so he was a 18th century sort of philosopher trying to write the history of the New World, and was dedicated to the collecting of original primary documents. He was based in Mexico and then left Mexico. He took antiquities. There's fascinating history there. But Munoz actually was in competition with I forget the sort of then governor, who is basically the crown, that also was trying to undertake the same project of collecting all of the antiquities of the land that they seek to control as colonial powers. So why do I bring this up? I just bring up these are images of some items. For instance, the item right here, the Relación de Jornada de Cebolla, is itself a transcript of the. If I read this, it comes out clear. This is a 1596 transcription of the earliest known copy of the Las Castaneda manuscript, which is the expedition of Vasquez de Coronado, and it is argued to be the first depiction or first description of the Americas by the Europeans, and they see not by the Americas, Western America, and they go to Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and it includes descriptions of the Grand Canyon. In previous eras, that document has been sort of seen as important simply because it documents the Grand Canyon, because the Grand Canyon is of such great significance. But in fact, there's much more to this, and there's depictions of Native Americans, and it needs to be seen, and thus it has been digitized. Also among the holdings of the Lenox Library was something called the Monumentos Guadalupanos, which we still call today according to our OCLC system. And it means the monuments of Guadalupe. But what's in there, I have a fragment here. This is a fragment of the Nican Mopahua, and the Nican Mopahua is a poem in Nahuatl of the appearance of the Virgin to Juan Diego, who was not then known as Juan Diego. That's only his baptized name. He was a native of Mexico. And this is a fragment dating this is what my colleague Miriam D'Artigny in our conservation office has been working on this and looking at the paper, and there's a lot of interesting history to it, and it may be the late 17th century. But in any case, this is at the New York Public Library. It is a treasure and will be part of the library's campaign to do treasures. But I only have so much time. I didn't bring up someone named John Bigelow, but the point is that underneath these gentlemen who were around is actually a global perspective. John Bigelow was the lawyer who helped combine the Astor and Lenox Library, but John Bigelow also was a diplomat, but in the 1840s he traveled to Haiti. He was opposed to slavery, and the reason why he went to Haiti was to show that it was a functional government in order to make sure that it couldn't become taken over and by powers who would enslave the citizens. So John Bigelow, as a person who's opposed to slavery, traveled to Haiti and wrote a book about the people of Haiti and how it was a functioning government, so that America would see it as a country, thus protecting potentially the people as citizens of a democratic republic and not people who could be enslaved. That is a big deal because we have Bigelow's diary where he goes to Haiti. This is the cover from 1853, and we have digitized this diary, and we need to think about new ways to kind of do digital humanities or to map this or do anything to kind of activate it, because it's really an original description of Haiti in the 1850s, and it's hard to read, but it is what research is. I only have so much time, so strengths. We have over 30,000 linear feet of manuscripts underneath Bryant Park. Every day that they stay there is a miracle, because that's Midtown Manhattan property being used to store historic documents. It's crazy if you think about it, so be thankful that it's still there. We have some strengths. I'll zip through some strengths. I wanted to say something about the Moses Taylor papers. I have a document too about the Moses Taylor papers. Moses Taylor is a very important figure in New York history. He was an importer. He worked with the sugar in Cuba and bringing sugar into Cuba. And there's a fascinating archive called the Moses Taylor papers, which is expansive, which really documents Cuba and New York, and also Cubans in New York. Because he collected all these newspapers from Cuban exiles in New York in order to understand what was going on. So in the Moses Taylor papers is a trove of 19th century Cuban exile newspapers printed in New York, which are hard to find elsewhere. And this context is so exciting because it's in the Moses Taylor papers. That's our reading room. We have the papers of Robert Moses and LaGuardia. This is New York City infrastructure. This is more strengths. We have the records of both World's Fairs. 3940 and 6465. So from a Latin American perspective, the involvement of the governments in the World's Fairs can be used to understand all kinds of cultural history, from eating habits to the history of art that was displayed there. And you can research those at the library. Our material, quickly, my colleague Cheryl kind of meant to be bumped out to the internet, but our material is all described. It's all described. So you can search it at archives.nypl.org, but you'll notice that there are limitations because of the way we describe archives. I only have one of the things I often sort of talk about is what an archive is. We need to remember that the goal of archivists is to keep things in the same order it was as it was created, thus to make sure that there's a connection between the researcher and whatever entity, the individual, family, or organization that created it. If that material gets arranged or jumbled, you then you lose the record. So we like to keep things in a sort of disorganized way and then describe that disorganization and call it a finding aid. And this doesn't always come through clearly, and that's why human relations are so important. And you always have to sort of talk to people and at the same time hope that they're professional. So again, that's how I talk about archives. This slide doesn't need to be here, but I want to tell you that archives are way up. They're really cool. People are using them. This is just something that I put together by looking at call slips in our reading room, and really back in the day they didn't let anyone in the 1910s. Less than 500 people, average less than 500 people per year in that decade. But now we're averaging upwards of 3,500 visits. That's total visits to the reading room. It's actually less than half individuals. But so we're very busy, and we're happy to be busier. So please come down. New acquisitions. The struggle of this presentation is that archives, everything documents and can relate to Latin America. Everything can relate to the hemispheric perspective, but we don't necessarily say that explicitly. So you have to kind of realize that you can do that. In 2008, the New York Times moved out of their building on Times Square to the tower on 8th Avenue. At that time, the corporate archive, or the sort of historical records that they had developed, moved to the New York Public Library. The New York Times records are not the newspaper, but the editorial correspondence behind the creation of the news. And as archivists, we described it not as a big archive, but as lots of little collections, depending on how the organization functioned. So, on part of the New York Times records is the New York Times Foreign Desk. The New York Times Foreign Desk is literally the people who were covering foreign news for the Times, and I can sort of, I'll say this best. The correspondence reveals aspects of daily life of the foreign correspondents, such as quarrels with editing staff in New York over changes in news stories and the frustration of reporting from totalitarian countries. So what's that about? This is quite interesting because you're going to have firsthand primary accounts of reporters, stringers in Latin American countries facing totalitarian regimes and trying to get the news out. This is really great stuff that has been available. It's only available recently and could all be used in many different types of projects. Likewise, we received the archive of the New York Review of Books, but the New York Review of Books, you could say, is limited in scope. It's about books. But in fact, it really was a sort of community of scholars, and there's great reporting in there. So this document goes out, when I was talking to someone here, this is a speech by the Mexican essayist Carlos Fuentes submitted to PEN America in 1976. So this is an edited speech that Carlos Fuentes delivered in 1976 that we don't necessarily have somewhere else. So therefore, the New York Review of Books archive is not just about the magazine, but about the culture of New York and the intellectual world that we have inherited. This is another document about a scuffle that Carlos Fuentes was detained by U.S. immigration and sent back in 1968. I forget. This is a document I found that opens up some interesting history. Another recent acquisition is something called the Jeffrey Biddle Alphabet City Papers, and I thought that there's a book that you may have seen called Alphabet City, which is a collection about a book about the Lower East Side. Jeffrey Biddle lived in the Lower East Side and was a sort of photographer and documented the Lower East Side of New York in the 1970s. And he took these pictures, but because he was so committed to this sort of project, not only did he take the pictures, but he returned to take the pictures again. So the archive includes photos from the 1970s, then again in the 1980s, and he interviewed the people who were in the photos. So the archive includes these photos of burned out Lower East Side and also the interviews with people later on. For instance, there's a photo here of Amy Zapata and then also Amy with her sister Lillian. We have an interview with Amy Zapata. And so this archive was a way for the library to sort of collect and document peoples of the Lower East Side and the community of the Lower East Side, which otherwise would have not necessarily been documented. It's just one effort. That was zipping through. So I think I can wrap it up. I want to say that the most important thing is that we have patience with one another. And you seek to really, I don't know, you seek to, when you go to the library, don't expect to find what you're looking for. Read outside the lines, look around things, and you'll find things. The more you kind of think you know what you're looking for, it doesn't work. So just come to the library and dig around, and we can find some things to help. And anyway, that's it. Thanks a lot.
When we were talking, preparing this panel, we were talking, all of us were talking about how much all these archives relate to each other, even though we don't know necessarily. And one example that Pedro gave, and I wanted you to if you could speak a little bit more about it, is the presence of materials and primary sources of Mexicans in New York at the Centro. Even though you would not think about it, because it's the Center for Puerto Rican Studies, right? So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Basically, we do have the photograph collection of Justo Martí. That was the second collection that we got after the oral history project. And Martí was interviewed by the Centro historians that were conducting the oral history. And eventually he became so close to Centro that he adopted the organization even before we had an archive. And he was a merchant marine. He loved photography. He all his life wanted to be a photographer. After he retired as a merchant marine, he came to New York, opened a photo studio where people went to take photos. And but he didn't stay sitting waiting for the customer. He decided that he was very aggressive, going to any event that were happening within the Hispanic communities in New York. And that allowed him to accumulate basically all the social events that were happening among Mexicans, about Cubans, Spaniards, and Argentinians, you name it. And they were there in the 1950s and 60s. And he left those thousands of photos to the Centro. Originally, when we got it, it's like, well, most of the photos are portraying Puerto Rican, but there's a significant part that definitely documents the other Latinos' presence in New York. And so that archive, we kept it as a collection. We didn't want to separate or split the collection. It's basically, we want to keep that collection. As happened with the Justo Martí, it happens with other collections. For example, we get the papers of Jesus Colón. He was an early Puerto Rican pioneer in the 1920s. He was founding many Puerto Rican organizations, but he was also a part of the lodges and the different labor groups. He was part of the International Workers Union. And in his paper, you can find the lodges that were founded in New York in the 1930s and 40s that shows Mexicans and Cubans. And they were working together with the Puerto Rican organization. So archives are like, we were saying here, basically, they're all interconnected, and even sometimes people think that when you go to Puerto Rican archives, it's like what Thomas said, and sometimes you will find a lot of things are waiting there, and we try to promote them, but not always we reach out to the right people. And so that's why it's so important to visit archives and explore and talk to the archivists. And if the archivist who processes the collection is around, it's even better, but not always that happens. So, engage your archivists, engage your librarians, and you will find many things that you didn't have idea you will find in the specific archives.
Yes.
Sarah touched on this, but let me ask her to elaborate, as well as someone else on the panel, to clarify how you go about soliciting or buying collections that are being formed today or in the last couple of decades. Are there policies of things that you want or don't want?
At the Dominican Institute, for example, we are collecting everything related to Dominicans. It doesn't have to be a prominent Dominican or famous one, but a civic leader, people that are making history within the United States and New York City. And the library side, the books and mainly books and dissertations that we have, 95% of them have been donated by the authors or by people who think that they should share this information with us. And it's amazing because what has happened is that many of these authors, they don't have more copies of their book sometimes or an article, and they come to us and we have them and we preserve them. They're very happy. So that's the way it works. Libraries and archives are meant to be legacy for the future, for everyone to access it, even the authors who sometimes don't have a copy. Jose, tal vez a ti te va a pasar eso alguna vez.
The back, yes. And then
I know that the New York Public Library has an extensive collection of Latin American photographs, and in fact, I think 1 year or 2 years ago there was an exhibit. And this year I am an alumni from the Guardia Community College, and we have a 3-year grant from the National Endowment for Humanities to enrich Latin American studies, and we have this year a group of 10 fellows in order to develop assignments, syllabi. And I would like to know if those photographs are available like for a guided tour, so that our fellows, our professors know what's there. And
The exhibition was, I forget the title, of Latin American photography.
yes, exactly. I believe it was 1 year ago.
That collection, or those photographs, come from the photography collection, which is a sort of a collection within the New York Public Library served out of room 308, and I would suggest go to that room, or the photography collection.
We have someone from Wallach Division
Wallach, sure.
that could talk if you
There you go.
you get.
Yeah, so that collection is
I want to go to that too.
me too, over here.
Sorry,
Yes.
can I just say something before we move on to the next question, which I meant to say, and I won't volunteer everybody, but I will say that classes come to visit the Schomburg Center, groups of interested community members, interested groups of whoever about some topic come and want to see very specific items, and you get in touch with the curator. In my case, for manuscripts, archives, and rare books, it would be me. So if it's a class, you're either you're teaching a class or you're taking a class or something like that, or you're part of a group that has some interest in something that we do. It's always, you can always ask and see if you can come and visit and view the collection.
Yes.
Is there any, or do you know of any meta search engine for bibliographic resources in Latin America, either in New York or in the US? Or you have to go catalog by catalog and looking for every different catalog, so you have any kind of
There are two resources, and not every institution.
different from Google.
Yeah, that participates in every, so I don't know if every institution represented at this table, for example, is part of Archive Grid. But that is an aggregator of records of archival collections across the United States, and you can get some kind of stub record about a lot of things across the United States for anybody.
Which one is it?
It's called Archive Grid.
Did you say bibliographic or are you reading?
Bibliographic in general,
Well,
primary.
Yeah. And in Europe, there's something called Europeana.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those would be, so Archive Grid is like the American version of Europeana.
And more bibliographic, that would be WorldCat, but of course not everything is represented. Just what our colleagues have said, not everything will be in those online.
I was thinking bibliographic or archival, I mean, any kind of sources.
So I do think there is such a wealth of resources, and you're never going to discover everything in one place.
Yes.
Even though, we are in, we would like that one day maybe, and the reality is you have, a lot of resources to go to. And yes, for bibliographic records, for folks, probably WorldCat is a great place to start. And Archive Grid for primary sources. There are many databases for journals, etc. So what many of us do who have a public role in libraries is that we maintain library guides or research guides. So they're just a place to start. So if you're at the Graduate Center, you can go to the Graduate Center library and go look at research guides by subject, and you can look into the subject you're researching. And we have a starting guide for books, journals, primary sources, etc. I'm sure NYPL also, and many other libraries that we work with. Having said that, that is just a starting point, and it's always, if you have the ability, it's always a great idea to reach out to your librarian and maybe think about something specific, for your research, and think about what ideas you could
Over here, you had a question. No? Not anymore? You? No? Okay. Yes, in the back. Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much. I love librarians. I'm teaching a course called Hispanics in the U.S. at City College. What happens with that kind of course is that I'm taking everything from different places, and I'm taking it out of the order in which it was originally cataloged in order to give my students the syllabus, right? But what I'm trying to do is to then take it apart and go back to the places where it came from. And that's something that I hadn't really realized until I started to try to do my own presentations for them to see where all of this material came from. Who were the chroniclers and who were the archivists who put it together in the first place, so that they can now look at it and sometimes get really bored, but then sometimes something will pique their interest and they'll want to know, well, where is that? And so that's, then it's where you are. So.
More questions? Yes, in the back. Yes. Yes, Jim.
Hi, I'm working on Brazil, and I have a couple of questions. One is, for example, were I to go and click on the Herskovits archives, would that also link me to other people who have written on Herskovits? How interconnected is, if you click on one thing, how big of a trail do you have? And is that something that's not what an archive does?
An archive sometimes does that, which is like a watch that sometimes works, I know. But in the Herskovits case, it's a pretty detailed finding aid, and so clicking through from that would be effective. And it's sort of like a lot of things. Once you've seen a bunch of finding aids, you know a good one when you see one and a bad one when you see one, and you can kind of intuit whether or not it will work for you, and then people on staff will be able to tell you. So that's kind of a not very good answer to a very specific question, but I do have one piece that I didn't mention that is helpful because it's something that the Schomburg Center has done at kind of a high level with categorizing collections by subject. So if you go to the Manuscripts, Archives, and Rare Books Division site for the Schomburg Center, somewhere in the middle of the page, there's a link that you can click that will take you to a PDF, and it's called something like Manuscripts Organized by Subject or something. And then there you'll see, you can Control F for Brazil, and then all of the times that we think a collection is enough about Brazil to warrant you looking at it, through this PDF, it'll be listed there. And so that's a good place for one's own research or for sending a new researcher, so that they can just kind of scroll through. And again, if you know the names of people who might be relevant, then they might appear in other parts of the list, but certainly, the Brazil part would be a place to look.
So, two other related questions. So would you all have, like, if I were to go to Schomburg, would I ask for the Brazil specialist? Do you have country-specific specialists, or religion, or politics, or you just go and ask who's working on Brazil?
You want to take that, Paloma?
That's a very tough question for NYPL. The collection, I would say the holdings for Brazil or any other topic related to Latin American studies, topic or specific country, are spread out in many places. So parts of them are in Schomburg, parts of them are at the Library for the Performing Arts. Parts of them are at the Schwartzman building here at 42nd Street. And all of us work, let's say, all my colleagues work in building or analyzing or describing those collections or archives in conjunction, let's say, but there's not a specific specialist. The Curator for Latin American Studies is a new position. So I'm looking forward at the ideas to see and understand how all these holdings are interconnected. And for someone that comes and says, I'm interested in Brazil, I'll say, the idea will be that there's that person that can connect to all these, but it's not that there's a specialist for Brazil. There's someone that oversees and is understanding where the collections or materials related to Latin American studies are within New York Public Library.
And the other question is about, do you connect with Latin American scholars? Do you have references, or is it just English, or is it just US?
Oh, no, we collect in Spanish, you mean in the languages? Yes, yeah. Spanish and Portuguese, heavily. And not only historical, in this case would be, well, we're talking more of historical archives, etc., but also current publications. So that would be directly, I'm the one that oversees all the current publications for all Latin America, the Caribbean, Iberia, in the languages too, including sometimes indigenous languages.
Yes, over here.
Do you lend to other libraries as well? Any of your archives at any point, maybe to Europe or to Latin America? Do you lend
to archives specifically?
Like not the archives, but any any publications or specific to a certain genre or subject? Do you share with other libraries?
To other libraries, yes. And foreign libraries,
yes, well.
Interlibrary loan?
Yeah.
Oh, we do have interlibrary loan. Well, we have an expert here that can answer.
We do participate in the national and international interlibrary loan programs, so you could place a request through your local institution, but because we're at the Graduate Center, I should say that we do have a lending program to Graduate Center affiliates. So you take your Graduate Center ID card and bring it to one of the 4 research libraries and have a sticker applied to your New York Public Library card. That gives you borrowing privileges from our general collections, excluding some types of materials. We don't loan serials, for example, or the odd format. We don't, of course, loan the microfilm. But the general collections in good condition can be loaned out to Graduate Center affiliates.
I would like to just add that I also happen to be the interlibrary loan supervisor here at the Graduate Center. We in fact borrow a lot of materials from the NYPL. They're great and generous lenders, and we do my lot under incredible collections. So you have several ways to go about it. You can request a direct, as Melissa was mentioning, and we also have interlibrary loan services here. So if you're part of the GC community, you can make use of that service. Having said that, not everything can be gotten through interlibrary loan, and I think that is a little bit part of the question too. For archival sources, usually it's a little more challenging to borrow from, understandably, because they are not circulating collections. Many of them are manuscripts, right? So in that case, visiting would be a great way. And the great thing is that you have these wonderful archives right here locally. If you need stuff from archives that are far away, some things, like limited reproductions can be arranged. So if there is a specific material that you need, you also want to get in touch. If you're at the grad center, you can get in touch with me, and I'll see what the situation is and what can be done.
Can I also just add something that's actually very exciting? We're now participating with Princeton and Columbia in what's called the Recap Shared Collection. And so you can actually borrow items owned by Princeton and Columbia that they house at our shared offsite facility and have those delivered directly to an NYPL research library. And those you can also take out with your graduate center privileges in your public library card. So we're working very hard to democratize access to these formerly fairly exclusive collections.
But you have to apply to Marley. You have to be part of Marley, no?
Center.
No, through the graduate centers?
We have a special borrowing arrangement with the graduate center.
Okay, well, good to know. Thank you. in the very back, someone.
To add some real quick. A lot of the interlibrary loans do come with the circulation library. I'm one of the librarians there. My name is Laura. I just came here to support my colleagues. And there's a lot of Latin American studies books in Spanish and English. Right now we're going to a massive reading project, but we are trying to adjust to both the needs of the community, especially Latin American studies and art studies, which is one of my strong areas. So whenever we get into other loans, I already know that they're looking for. So that's another thing that we have. It's two things: the research libraries and Middlehead Library. But Middlehead Library has a large collection of literature in Spanish, as well translations from Spanish to English, and sometimes into Portuguese. So if I see anyone there,
Yes. Can I add something to what Laura just said? I was surprised to see when I was at the Bronx Library Center, which is one of the public branches of New York Public Library. They have, for those that are interested in doing research on el libro vaquero, they have it all there. I'm like, oh my God, they have a libro vaquero here. So those are things that, because it's far more the type of the materials are more for entertainment sometimes, right? But also those are materials that researchers want to look at and study. So keep that in mind. I'm glad that you brought it up, that the branches also have relevant materials for researchers.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. I have two related questions. The first one is, are you training people to learn how to research archives? Are you offering programs for people to learn how to dig into archives? That's the first one. And the second is, do you offer any kind of grants for doing archival research in your library?
I can speak just briefly about the Graduate Center Library. I think we have Donna here. I just want to mention that I think, is it every semester or every year? We offer a workshop. It's an introduction to archival research, and it's a wonderful workshop that I recommend to everyone. It's actually open to the public, so if you subscribe to the blog, you can go and see when this workshop is. It's about 2 hours, and I've really heard it's one of the best workshops we have. So I do recommend that you look out for this one.
At the Dominican Institute, we created a research program, grant program, and it's been for 3 years now. We get money from the New York City Council, and what we do, we give $3,000 for researchers to come and use the resources related to Dominican studies, And also we have a National Supermarket Association. You know, they own all the supermarkets in New York City, so they gave money to us, $5,000 every year, to support a researcher to Dominican related. So if you're interested in Dominican studies, we're going to put out the ad soon for this summer.
So for instance, if I wanted to take a look at the Moses Taylor collection, and I wanted to take a look at newspapers, what do I do? Is there, for instance, I click, and then what do I do?
Do you want to see them in physical at the library?
Yeah, well, if they are digitalized, I would like to know. I would like to know, first of all, what papers do you have? What papers are held in this specific collection, for instance? How do I get there?
How do you get to the library?
No, I can walk from here to the library for sure. But that's, because when I was doing research about the readers in the tobacco factories, and my big question was about whether they had been readers in the tobacco factories in New York City at the end or during the 19th century, I had a very hard time knowing where to go from. So I'm just asking a question because probably some of my students or some people here have the same questions. If I had known that this collection existed, probably I had gone through that, but I went to genealogies, I didn't know better.
There's a finding
Yeah, you just make an appointment. Sorry, I mean, would it be wrong if I said you make an appointment, you come in and you talk to an archivist, and then we get the material ready for you, and then you look at it? But if you only looked at it for an hour, you wouldn't learn as much as if you looked at it for 2 hours?
Of course.
And then maybe you didn't come back?
Yes, well, back then I didn't know that this collection existed, that this collection held the newspapers that I was looking for. That's my point. I didn't know that this specific collection had these papers on Cuba. So if I had known, yes, I could have spent like a year reading those newspapers, but I didn't know better. So that's one of the questions that as a user, we don't know, like I don't know.
But if this happens so much when doing research, that you come in contact with something that you didn't know existed, and that's the research. It's an iterative process it's hard to sort of predict what you're going to find and then repeat that process the same way to find the same thing. You have to kind of explore and be open to new challenges and new things each day.
But there's
I learned this today. Thank you.
And LibGuides too. So that's what Silvia had mentioned before, and other colleagues. There's several of us are putting together, like you say, when we find that there's relevant materials in places that are obscure. Then we create this LibGuides, which is one of my responsibilities. I'll be working on creation of LibGuides. Silvia has her library or research guide, sorry, I'm calling it the way we call them, very sorry. But that's a starting point. So sometimes these research guides can be overwhelming because they might have too much information. We get excited, we start listing all the links and the places where you might find something. And that's one of the things that we always have to keep in mind. This is just what we created, or what we call research guides, are just a starting point for researchers to start digging. And if they find something that potentially is of their interest, then contact us by email, call, or go to the library. So there's many options too. But yes, it's always that how do you connect something that someone doesn't know is there with the person that actually is looking for it is always one of the challenges that we have in our profession.
Thank you.
That's one of the great things about this panel, if I may just
Thank you
add,
for doing
is that we were able to bring other experts here so you can see, the depth of knowledge that they have of other collections. So I think, always remember what you're doing through research guides, databases, like all the sources. Maybe there's something else that you're not able to see, and maybe reach out and say, hey, I'm doing this research. What do you think? What do you think you have? And because who would have thought that some of these collections, that they would be related so deeply to like the Cuban sugar trade, right? Like, and all the papers that they were able to collect. Just by looking at the name, I wouldn't have known. So you do want to, start those conversations, and I think that's our hope for all those of you who came today.
I would just want to,
Yes.
I think it's totally fair that you didn't find it the first time. As more things become available
I mean,
online,
I
it
went
just
out of my way. I mean, I did research in Tampa, in Cuba, in everywhere, in the Dominican Republic, in Mexico. I did find a lot of wonderful material, but that part was missing in my book.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm hurt by that.
But as more things become available, finding it online and
Yes,
catalogs
yeah.
are made,
Little
so,
by little, So maybe an
Next book.
article in the future.
New edition.
Yes, Peter Johnson, who was a
Following
librarian.
up on your question, there are a number of major research libraries in the US as well as in Europe that do provide research grants to go there and use specifically Latin American collections. And if you just think of the major collections, you write there and you figure out sometimes there's a cycle of applying, it's all due on a certain date, others it's open. But to mind come Tulane has one, University of Florida, Vanderbilt, Duke, Princeton, I think Austin, Cornell. So there's money out there for junior scholars, graduate students, senior scholars, but it pertains exclusively to the collections at that institution. So it's worthwhile cultivating the curators of those collections and checking the research guides. I mean, the panel's been very good in identifying the types of finding aids and bibliographically how you march from point A to B to C. And there is possibly gold at the end.
In many cases, the librarians know about those grants too. So
Yes.
you're a librarian. So what Peter was saying is true. There's some collections, those collections that are larger or that are called libraries of Latin American studies, such as Tulane, UT Austin, et cetera, have grants specifically to do research on those collections, but other big, large research libraries also offer grants for scholars to use the collections in general. It's not only Latin American, but it happens that there is a large holdings, significant holdings on Latin American studies. One of them was my former institution, University of Wisconsin-Madison offers $2,000 for researchers to travel to Madison and use the collections, and it is among the top 10 in the country too. Sorry, I'm kind of putting a plug in, but it's just keep in mind that it's not only the ones that offer it specifically for Latin American studies. There's so many more that offer grants for researchers that fall within the larger collections.
We are going to take the last question. Yes, go ahead.
Going back to Paloma's original question about Mexican resources, I was wondering if people from CUNY know if the Mexican Studies Center at Lehman is developing a collection.
Yes, they are, and they have met with us a lot as a consultant, and they're putting together library and archives. It's going to take a while because it needs a lot of resources, but yes. And meet Richard. Richard is from the Instituto Cervantes. He's a librarian there.
We do also have a very large number of Latin American resources, especially literature and cinema.
Thank
Not
you.
just literature.
All right, well, we are going to have to end this here, but you may approach the panelists and talk to them. They have their business cards, some bibliography there. So thank you so much for